You're listening to the Born to Kick Arse podcast with Matt Tomasi and can be found at borntokickarse.com/episode 4.
Welcome to the Born to Kick Arse podcast, where you're introduced to the most fascinating people on the planet. Learn the ingredients of greatness that you can apply to your life. And now your host, Matthew Tomasi.
Richard Bowles is an adventure runner who has run some of the world's longest mountain trails. He is the first person to have run the world's longest marked trail, Australia's Bicentennial National Trail, from Healesville, Victoria to Cooktown in far north Queensland, a total of 5,330 kilometres along the Great Dividing Mountain Range. 3 weeks later, Richard then ran the entire length of New Zealand's mountainous Te Araroa Trail, a distance of 3,054 kilometres. Richard has run Israel's National Trail, covering its 1,009 kilometre length in 14 days. He's the record holder for the 1,200 kilometre Hasten Trail in South Australia, completing that in 14 days. Richard is also the first person to have run around the base of an exploding volcano in northern Sumatra. Enjoy the interview. Richard Bowles, thanks for your time today and welcome to the Born to Kick Arse podcast.
Mate, I'm excited actually. It's an exciting time. I love the topic we're going to speak about today. It gets me pumped. Just you giving me a call saying, can we have you on the podcast? That in itself gets me fired up.
Oh, that's awesome. Your list of achievements is quite extraordinary. I've been having a look at your website, which is richardbowles.com.au. You're also on Wikipedia, and there's a whole heap of other websites. Before we get into what you've actually done, can you maybe give us a bit of a background as from? I can hear you've got a bit of an accent.
Yeah,
where you grew up.
Maybe I just put that on Matthew, because it sounds kind of sexy. No, I was born in the UK, in a place called Leicester, which is in the East Midlands, up there in the north of England. And I moved here to Australia almost 16 years ago. So I kind of consider myself an Australian these days. And it's funny, I never was accepted as an Australian until I achieved something huge. And then they said, oh yeah, we'll claim you now.
I guess
Australian way, right?
Yep, that's it.
And I've only really started running since I've been here in Australia. So my running resume, as large as it is, has only been across the last 16 years. So I've got Australia to blame for this addiction that is running. And I started off like most people do, just with runs around the block, and it just grew from there, until I did my first marathon. And someone said to me, when you run a marathon, that will change your life. I remember crossing the finishing line thinking, I feel exactly the same. I still feel like Richard Bowles. And it's not until I look back now, I realize how much that has changed my life. Yeah, absolutely. So, and these days I bounce from adventure to adventure, all over the world, and then come back to Australia and speak to corporates about that, about how I guess, run these huge feats.
Yeah, the term adventure running, I hadn't really heard that before. Obviously, I've heard of trail running, ultra marathons, ultra running, but the term adventure running is something I hadn't actually heard of or really tuned into.
Yeah, okay.
Is there much of a difference between adventure running and, I guess, ultra marathons?
Well, I guess an adventure is what it is, right? It's an adventure, and I think every runner to a degree has their own adventure, regardless if you're doing a 3K run or a 300K run. It's an adventure every time you leave the door. I mean, even today, I tripped over a dustbin out on the street, so I didn't plan for that, and that's really what adventures are. But I guess for me, in the bigger scale, is that I'm going off into the wilderness for days, weeks, months at a time. And that really is for me a real big adventure. And I guess the word adventure also, it means to take risks, and running the distances I do in the environments that I do it in is a huge risk, both physically and mentally. So really that's kind of where I guess the term adventure came from. I mean, some people also call it journey running, because you go on a journey. But like I said before, I think every runner has their own journey, right? Everyone's got a unique story, and each and every one of us lace our shoes up for completely different reasons. So every time you get out the door, it's an adventure of some sorts.
Done some very long runs, very mouth-watering runs. I can only try and imagine what you went through. In 2012, you did the Australian Bicentennial National Trail.
Was it that long ago, Matthew?
Yes.
It still haunts me.
So can you tell us a bit about that? How far was it? What is the Bicentennial Trail? Where did it start and end?
Yeah, well, I'm not sure if it's ended, mentally for me, it still carries on. But look, the Bicentennial National Trail is classed as the world's longest marked trail. And that basically means that it's not a trail. I mean, there's longer trails around the world, but it's continually marked. I believe that you can't put a marker on the tree at the start and a marker on the tree at the end and call it marked. But anyway, they like to call it marked. It's a 5,330 kilometre trail across Australia's Great Dividing Range. It starts in Hillsville down in Victoria and finishes in Cooktown in far north Queensland. That is the longest run to date I've done, and it took me just over 5 months to tackle that one. And it was actually my first run too. It was my first real big run. I decided if I was going to do something, I want to go and do something big. If I'm going to do such a huge kind of adventure, I'm going to tackle the biggest. And this was the longest mark trail, and it just happened to be here in my back garden here in Australia. So it kind of made complete sense. So I had a 5-month journey running along the Great Dividing Range, and it's a very unique trail. It's kind of a mixture of outback Australia as you know it, with the red dirt, and kind of coastal shrubs and stuff. It's really pretty trail, but if anyone knows too much about sort of the outback of Australia, you also know it's got some weird and wonderful people that live out there too, and that often was the biggest challenge for me.
Yeah, I remember seeing a video. You at some point, possibly in Queensland, you came across a farmer with a gun.
I like it how you said Queensland. You're being racist.
Was it Queensland?
State, Matt. Yeah, I did. Look, I thought that was going to be a big challenge until then I had to cross the Daintree on foot. Which everybody knows is full of crocodiles, but. Yeah, the farmer with the gun, he was, I'd probably been out between seeing the support crew and actually coming across this guy probably for three days straight, just alone in the middle of nowhere. And it was the first person I saw throughout that 3 days. And I think I kind of surprised him as much as he surprised me. But I'm guessing he was trying to hide something, but he literally did shove the shotgun down my throat.
Really?
And told me he was going to beeping shoot me.
Yeah.
I actually don't remember being that scared, and that doesn't mean that I'm a superhero. I just think the fact that I'd ran 4,000 kilometers at that point, with just over another 1,000 to go, I was like, well, you ain't going to stop me now. I've gone through the hard yards. I've killed myself to get here. So you just need to move out of my way. So we kind of had a discussion, and eventually we kind of shook hands and parted ways. But that's what, again, that term adventure comes from, Matthew. Is that you just don't know what you're going to come across. That and crocodiles and volcanoes that erupt, and I've had missiles fire over my head. The list goes on. It's a wild ride. Mm.
Yeah, just looking at some of your other runs as well. You've done the Israel National Trail, which is just over 1,000 Ks. The Aroa Trail.
Aroa,
I've butchered that, but
it's a Kiwi trail. Yeah.
Yep, and that was 3,054 Ks. When you go to embark on these runs, how long, lead up time to the run, do you sort of give yourself for planning? Yeah. Planning your logistics, getting your mindset sorted. Like often for me, it takes a number of months, leading up to a particular run, just to get your headspace sorted, get your gear sorted, and all the logistics and planning and all that. sorted as well.
Yeah.
How much sort of lead time do you give yourself for these really long runs?
Yeah, well, the lead times has changed. From the very first one, the lead time was probably 2 years of planning. For a 5,500 kilometer trip. I was supported by my girlfriend at the time in a camper van. So she used to meet me where the trail intercepted the road, or the road intercepted the trail rather. And that could be, every 100 kilometers, every 500 kilometers, just whatever. So there was actually two lots of logistics, and then there was finding food and fuel, and finding access points to get into me. That became really, really, really difficult. But I think it was more so that it was a whole new experience. So, I'd never ran those sort of distances before. Definitely never ran 5,500 kilometers before. I didn't really know much about the gear I might need. It was a full learning process for the first 2 years. And, we both worked full-time jobs, and then we managed to get this whole thing funded and sponsored in between that, as well as trying to train, So I guess on the mindset side for me on that one, it was already made up. My mind was, I just made a decision, and that's where anything has to start. And I think if you make a decision and you make a clear, defined decision, then the mindset just sorts itself out, because in your own mind, it's done. For me, like most of these runs I do, I've finished them in my own mind before I've even got on the start line. I'm drinking beers, I'm celebrating the whole thing way before I even got to the start line. But then since that first one, it becomes easier because we've done it before, So now really, the gap between running the 5,500 kilometer bicentennial national trail and New Zealand's Te Arua Trail, just over 3,000 kilometers, was literally 2 weeks. So I had this thought in the last probably month on that trail. I thought, I've got four weeks to go here in Australia. I've been running here for the best part of half my life, half the year. What happens now? Like, what happens next? And I panicked. So in my own mind, I dreamt up this other idea of going running the Te Arua Trail over in New Zealand. So I told my partner there at the time, and she said, "Okay, if you want to do it, let's start planning it now." So we're actually planning that trip before we finish the one we're actually on. And I finished the one here in Australia, had a 2 week break, and then flew straight to New Zealand and started that one, and ran for another 54 days. So it was, in terms of a break, there wasn't much in the way of that between those two. And then the ones after that have probably been in 6 month gaps. And, that's just to give me rest and recovery, I guess. The planning can be as easy or as hard as you want to make it, I think. I think I meet a lot of runners that overcomplicate stuff, and it's the easiest sport in the world. Like, you don't need any special equipment, really. You don't need a team. You don't need to be in a certain country, a certain location, a time of day. Like, all that stuff's irrelevant for running. So I think we need to just remember that it is simple. It's walking, but a lot quicker, right? So I don't know why people love to try and complicate it. And what I've learned is over this amount of time is that the easier I make it, the easier it is for me. Because it really is quite simple.
What sort of distances were you covering on average with the bicentennial?
The bicentennial trail, I was trying to kind of average about 50 Ks a day. And when I look back at that particular trail now, that is, I guess, it was more like a holiday, really. And I don't say that in an arrogant way, because 50 Ks a day for 5 months is hard, especially in the mountains. But I think, considering what I do now, I do almost double that distance each day. I look back at it and go, yeah, I could really nail that one. I could, I often think about going back and doing it again, but yeah, I think I could really give it a good crack. But on that one, it was trying to aim for the kind of 50 a day, and the marathon to 50 Ks a day. So I think on average it was like 174 marathons or something. Yeah.
With multi-day running, is there a point early on in the run where, maybe on day 2 or day 3, it's just really about recovery?
Yeah, do you know what, Matthew? It's a funny thing because, you read books and I read about other people who have done multi-day stuff, and I think what I've realised is that I'm either completely different to them or they're one of the two. Because, because I don't know, I don't buy into the whole, the first day is like you're excited, then the second day you go, oh, what have I done? And then you kind of struggle for a few days before you come out the opposite end. I don't believe that. No, I think I've done some runs where the first week's been amazing, and then it's gone downhill, or the first day has been terrible. I mean, the first day in Israel, I had missiles flying over my head when I was in the middle of the desert. Like, that's enough to just, make you stop and turn around and quit, And, yeah, exactly. So it's maybe it's different for people who do multi-days on tracks, or these runs they're doing in New York around a block, all that kind of stuff. Maybe that's different. But I know for me, like, I don't know. I guess what I've learned over the years is that I've got a really good ability to put myself in a comfortable position before I leave. And what I mean by that is that I see it as me sitting on a couch in a nice room. It's perfect temperature. I've probably got a beer and my feet up, and I'm watching the whole adventure unfold on a giant TV. And that way I kind of protect myself. So even though I'm going through all of this, even though mentally and physically I'm struggling through all of that stuff, I kind of feel like I'm watching it on a big screen, and that gives me the ability to be safe, I think. And often my support crew will say to me that you never speak about yourself. We ask how you are, you always say fine, and then you're more concerned about how we are. If we've eaten, if we've slept well, if we've got fuel, if all that kind of stuff. And I think for me, it's if I'm external, then it keeps me from going internal. And I think if you go internal as a distance runner, that's not a good place to be. That's battling demons kind of stuff. So yeah, I think that's what it is. Like, it thinks you just gotta remove yourself from it. I think that's what I'm getting at. I think you got to remove yourself from what you're trying to achieve.
When you're in those low points, when you think external, as you're saying, do you find that helps you? Is that where you sort of draw inspiration from your friends and family? Particularly when you're really struggling?
No, that's the answer. Not really. In fact, if anything, they can make me sad. I think about my family and stuff, and then I go, and particularly when you're worn down. Like, if you've been running for 2 weeks straight and you're knocking out 85, 95 Ks a day, carrying a backpack in the middle of nowhere, it wears you down. I always say it's like the layers of an onion. Each day peels off another layer, until you really are this raw person. And when I think about friends and family, I feel sad for all the horrible things I've ever said, or, for not calling my sister enough in the UK, or something rude I said to my partner, all those things. And that makes me really, really sad, which is a different kind of dark, I guess, to trying to fight demons in your head to move forward. But I draw inspiration on just the land itself. Like, I take massive pleasure in looking at a leaf that has one droplet of rain on it, and get into a whole headspace about thinking about how that is, how's that possible? What is up there, and the bigger world. I really do draw on the landscape rather than on myself or people that I know. But then saying that, recently I was doing an interview on a stage at a conference I was at, and someone asked who was my inspiration, and I said, well, this is going to sound really, really arrogant, but I'm my inspiration. People go, that's ridiculous. You can't say that. I said, well, the thing is, we all do some pretty amazing things day to day, and we never give ourselves a big pat on the back of it for it. And I think if you go and look in the mirror and look at yourself and go, you know what, you've done some pretty amazing stuff in your time. That is pretty inspiring. For that person looking at you in the mirror to achieve things, family, career stuff, personal goals, whatever the case may be, that's inspiring. And I think, it's people like Muhammad Ali, for example, that bring that to the forefront by walking around saying, I am the greatest, and they mean that. They're not saying that to intimidate people. They believe they are. They go, yeah, I'm really good at this, and he inspired himself. And that can really, really snowball into a big thing. If you keep inspiring yourself and giving yourself a pat on the back, that in itself is inspiring. It's definitely motivating. The other example I often give is that, if you listen to most of the rappers in the rap music, that always walk around saying, I am the business, I've got this, I'm amazing, I'm God's gift. And as arrogant as you might think that is, that just keeps them going and pushing forward and producing more and having progress. And as I said, it's the same as the Muhammad Ali thing. It's like, I'm great. I'm an inspiration. I do amazing things daily with my family, friends, with my work. And I think that is the ultimate inspiration.
With the multi-day runs, what has that taught you about patience?
Well, I'm not patient. That's what it taught me, that I'm not patient. Yeah, definitely. I mean, definitely. Like it's as much as I said before, I ran the trail before I even got there. That's visualization stuff. When I'm there, I'm not thinking about the end of the trail, because that's overwhelming for anybody. To think you've got 5,500 or 3,000 Ks or 1,000 or even a marathon to run, like that's just like, whoa. So for me, I just chunk it up. It's just I'll do 20 Ks this morning, and then I'll do another 20 Ks, and I just work it like that. But my mind doesn't dot all over the place at all, actually. It stays with me, because people always say to me, what do you think about when you're out there for 8, 12, 16 hours a day in the middle of nowhere? And I say, well, I don't think about solving the world's problems. I think about what I'm doing. Because anyone who does any kind of trail running, sure, all along appreciates the fact that if you take the concentration off what you're doing, you trip over, you stand on a snake, you run into a tree, you get lost. And when you're running 5,000 Ks, you don't want to get lost. I have to think about if I need to eat now, am I sore, am I getting blisters, how's my headspace? And this is just a constant thing that goes on and goes on and goes on and goes on. And when it doesn't, I've literally nearly lost my life. And that happened in New Zealand. It was really bad weather. I was in this mountain range for 4 days, and the weather was bad. Like I couldn't see my feet. The fog was that thick. And I knew I was running on a ridge line. So you knew you didn't want to make any mistakes because you were going off the side. And I let my mind wander. I was thinking of all the things I'd rather be doing, like, having a cup of tea, sitting on the couch, having a cuddle from my mum, all these things, having a biscuit. And as soon as I started thinking about that stuff, I literally tripped over and rolled 80 meters down the mountainside, only to be saved by 2 rocks that my backpack got wedged in between. Literally, and it was literally just quickly, just to let my mind go off what I was doing. So, that focus and attention on what you're doing right now is so, so important. And that goes for life, right? Because, you might not fall off a cliff and nearly lose your life, but you might take the wrong turn and spend a whole lot of time and energy and sometimes money going down the wrong path because you let in all the things at the side of you, take your attention. So you just need to be in the moment, and it's kind of a nice thing to be in the moment, I think, because you don't know what's going to happen in the future, and the future is like the next second. The past has been, and it's kind of eroded. So the only time is now, right?
I guess when you're in that flow state or in the zone or on these longer runs, does it take you long to get into that particular mindset, or are you pretty much switched on and on the ball from the start of the day, or does it take you a few hours to get into that groove and to settle down and really relax?
I think I'm kind of in the groove for the whole thing. Like as much as I get tired and all that kind of stuff, I don't really until it's over. And as soon as I cross the finish line, I'm just like, now I'm tired, now I'm sore, now I'm hurting. And I think it's going back to me putting myself in a position where it's comfortable, and rather than be in it, just view it. And then it's exciting. Because you can watch Bear Grylls eat or drink his own wee, right? But doing it yourself is a whole different thing. But you can watch that on TV and kind of make it a comical and funny thing. So for me, the whole thing's like that from beginning until the end, for months at a time. Like I'm just immersed in it. And I have to be, because you can't finish the day and just go back to normal until you wake up the next day and then pack up your tent and move on again. The whole thing is constantly like you're just in it. You've got to you pack, you build your tent and you eat and you get into sleep because you have to. That's what you have to do. Otherwise, tomorrow's going to be a nightmare. So it's that kind of regimented kind of approach as well. So I'm constantly locked into this focus and this kind of, and this drive just to do it. You know, I don't question stuff. I don't get up in the morning and question why my knee hurts, or somebody lost something, the team lost something, or, you know, or we didn't have any water, or there's a leak in the backpack, and all the other stuff that goes wrong. Or, you know, a guy comes with a shotgun, or get chased by a tank, or, you know, a wild dog, or whatever the case may be. Like, I don't question that stuff. I just don't think about it. I just get up and do what I need to do. And it's that easy, you know. And people should do that more daily, like just to try and get out the door in the morning for a run. Like, when the alarm clock goes off, and I say this to my partner all the time, like, don't think about lying in bed or it'd be nice to stay here. Just get up, stand up, and then think about that. But it's too late then, because you're standing up. And it's literally like that every day. I just stand up, just put my shoes on, and just go through the motions.
Yep.
Yeah, and you just have to.
So how mentally tough would someone need to be to embark on an adventure like one of the ones you've done?
I reckon if you've lived a bit of life, and you can do it, right? Because life's hard. Like, life's way harder than any run. Life's tough. It is a tough gig. I think it probably builds mental strength. You know, like anything, like just getting out and running around the block builds mental strength. I don't think you have to be anybody. I'm not an amazing runner by any means. And in fact, if I'm completely honest with you, I don't even like running that much. Not enough to go and run around the world like I do. You know, it's not the running stuff. You know, I think anybody can do anything if they want to do it. And that's the difference. You got to want to do something. You know, I can't figure out why people want to go to work from 9 till 5 in an average job. You know, the normal what's considered normal. I can't get my head around that. I think that would be mentally I'd find that hard. Yet people do that all the time. So, you know, I don't think you have to have any kind of mental strength. We've all got mental strength if you do in life. And
what is it about running that you love? What is it that makes you happy?
Not love. Well, look, I don't love, as I said before, I don't love the actual activity of running. And I think if runners are honest, they don't enjoy the activity of running. You know, you're often thinking about finishing when you start. You know, it's always a battle to put your shoes on. You know, you're sweating, you're out of breath, you can be tired, your muscles can be sore. It's only when you get back, I think that is what people really love about running. It's when it's finished. That's the part that's addictive. And that certainly is the case for me, because it gives me an unbelievable life. You know, and when I look back at the things I've done, like I've traveled the world, I've spent time with some amazing people. My work is amazing. I work with amazing companies and people all over the country and sometimes overseas. Like it's all the other stuff that it's given me, you know. I've learned so much about myself, you know, things that I really like, things that I don't like, things I'm able to achieve, and that just seems to never end. I think once you go and do something like a marathon, for example, it does actually change your life. You can never be the same person again when you've done anything like that. And I think that's what it is for me.
Do you think there's a limit to the human spirit at all?
Only the ones we put on it. Yeah. I think, you know, I think people, we're only limited by ourselves. And I'm guilty of that daily. You know, I put limits on stuff all the time. And even though people say, but you've done this and this and this and this, how can you put limits on that? It's because I think about that completely differently. So we only put our limits on stuff. You know, it's only us that puts the challenges and the obstacles in the way of anything. In terms of it is just a mental thing. Like my body, as much as it probably has held up quite well with some of the things I've done, I think it only holds up well because I tell it that it can. I'm a big believer with injuries and stuff that people can often dream up injuries. There's probably people out there that can remember a time where they felt a niggle and then they've dwelled on it. Oh, it could be this, it could be that, and then it works out to be that. Or you have a niggle and you forget about it and you keep moving on and it just goes away. So I think we can create stuff and put limitations in the way and put our own challenges in the way. And it's just, as I said before, like running is the most simplest of things ever. Like you don't really have to think at all.
Yep. Just looking through your resume, is there a particular run that you're most proud of?
I don't know. It's a really hard one. People often ask me that question. It's a hard one because they're all so different, and the experiences that you have are so different. I always thought that probably New Zealand has probably been the toughest, just in terms of terrain, because there's some big country there, big mountains, days spent in avalanche zones above the snow line, crossing some pretty wild rivers that I've been washed down and found out that there's a huge waterfall just 200 meters down. In terms of terrain, that is probably tough. So I'm pretty proud that I took that challenge on, particularly after running the 5,330 just 2 weeks before that. And then the other one is probably back here in Australia, actually, on the Hyson Trail, South Australia's Hyson Trail, for some reason, and I don't know why, I can't figure it out, I kind of fell in love with. I mean, it is a beautiful trail, but so is Israel, so is Sumatra, so is
the Hyson Trail, that was 1,200?
1,200, yeah, 14 days.
And I noticed on your website there was some footage of you running in with a mask on. Was that in Sumatra?
It's in Sumatra, yeah. So I ran. Yeah, that was a bit crazy. I was doing some kind of mini documentaries for a sponsor of mine who makes backpacks called Source, and they bought out a whole bunch of new kit, and they said, let's do some like little mini doco with we'll put the gear in there, and that's kind of how we do like the giant infomercial, if you like. Can you go and test it in some cool environments in Australia? Probably, the more rugged, the better. I was like, well, look, I've heard that there's a volcano exploding over in Sumatra right now. How about we go and run around that? That'll really put the gear to the test. So they were like, yeah, okay. They said, okay. We didn't expect that. So they flew me and a camera guy over, and we spent a couple of weeks there. But what we decided to do was run from a place called Medan, which is the largest city in Sumatra in the north, and run across the northern tip all the way through to the volcano, which is on the western side, or the eastern side, which way you want to look at it. So we ran through Medan, which in itself is a crazy, as you can imagine, in Indonesia, donkeys walking across the road and chickens and people on mopeds and all sorts of stuff. And then trying to dodge the big holes in the ground where the sewerage is and that kind of stuff. And then we moved on to the jungle, ended up running through the jungle, got chased by orangutans there, which was pretty exciting. And then running around the largest volcanic lake in the world, and then moved on up to the volcano. And the government had actually evacuated 80,000 people from the area because that's how bad it was. Like, it was literally raining ash from the sky 200 kilometers away from the volcano. It was insane. We got to this small town as close to the volcano as possible, and we tried to find a guide to take us up there because we didn't know the route. And everyone kept saying, nah, you don't go there, nah. And then we found this one guy, basically because it's Indonesia and money talks, right? So we just paid him a lot of money, and he said, okay, I'll take you, but the army's barricaded it off, so you can't get up to the volcano. And I said, well, again, we'll pay him if we have to. He goes, yeah, true. So we drove up there. Even the army had gone. There was nobody around. And we were driving through probably like 0.5 meter thick volcanic ash in this car. It was really, and it was just constantly raining from the sky. Every now and again, you'd hear these huge big rumbles, and then literally it would rain down, golf balls from the sky. You'd have to take cover. These golf ball sized rocks fell from the sky. And, I don't remember being scared. It was kind of, I think I wasn't scared because the cameraman was so excited. He said, this is amazing. This is the best thing I've filmed ever in my life, in my whole career. It was lying down in the dust and all that kind of stuff. But anyway, we just quickly did as quick as we could, ran around this base. The car came around as much as it could. And the camera guy filmed the whole thing, and then we just got out of there and got back down to the town. So look, that's definitely a highlight when I talk about highlights, because that's something probably no one in the world has ever done. And so they shouldn't, because we heard 2 weeks after we got back that, some people had died who hadn't left the villages surrounding it, So, it's scary. But we decided that we'd give back while we were there, and we helped out for charity, and we give some money back to a charity. So, in itself, it kind of, we did manage to give back, which was nice. But yeah, I mean, that is adventure running right there.
The Israel run in 2013, is it like a war zone over there? What was that like?
Yeah, it's amazing. I mean, what a place to run. If you think about it, like, it's probably like the cradle of civilization itself, right? Like, it's everybody. I think that's probably where man came from. Yeah, like that in itself was just gave me a sense of, I don't know, a sense of something. I just felt something there. I think that's what it was. I'm not sure if I hyped it all up in my own mind, because it is like this cradle of civilization or what. But just being there was amazing. But no, it's not really a war zone like the media make it out to be at all. In fact, the people there are very peaceful and everyone's kind of calm. I mean, there was missiles over my head on the first day, but they said that it actually came from a border, from some rebels, and not really any kind of conflict with, anybody else. And there was nothing really to fear, even though I saw it and felt it. And it didn't happen again, and I was just completely immersed and lost in the Negev desert for, the first week of that 14-day adventure. Just absolutely incredible. I mean, if you've ever ran in a desert, like that in itself is tough, but deserts look so boring until you spend time in them. And when you spend time in them, you start to notice that there's a lot of life in a desert, even though it looks lifeless. There's lots of flowers, there's lots of little birds, there's lots of animals and stuff that you don't see when you just spend a day there. Only when you kind of immerse yourself in it for so long. So really beautiful trail, and it starts right down in the a place called Elat, which is most southern point of Israel, and kind of winds its way up to the Sea of Galilee, and then over to the capital there, and then ends up in the far north in a place called Kibbutz Down, which is right on the border of Syria and Lebanon. Probably a place you won't want to go to now, but just what an amazing place. Yeah.
And I understand you got a foot infection on that run. How'd you deal with that? And was there any point that you were contemplating pulling out or quitting at all?
No, I didn't actually. I didn't think about quitting once until it actually brought me to my knees. And again, when I look back at some of the video footage from that I have, I'm like a different person. Like I just go, I don't even know who that person is. The team, it actually wasn't right probably after the first day. And I just blamed it on the sand and the heat and stuff. But even by day 3, I couldn't put my shoe on properly. I was forcing down the back of it, so I was wearing it like a croc. I'm not even doing the laces up, and still managing to knock off 85 Ks, up to 95 Ks on one of the days as well, every day. I remember the team sitting me down probably about 4 or 5 days in, saying, "Look, you this is bad. Like, there's a red line going up your leg. Sorry. You've clearly got an infection." I'm just like, "No, you guys are supposed to be supporting me. So just do that. All right, you support me. You're not supposed to tell me what not to do." And I just had this mind, like I said before, like I'm not in it. I'm just viewing it. So it's kind of like, and I'm focused and just concentrate on what I'm doing. So it's kind of like I'm not really thinking about it. I just detached myself from it, even though it was horrific. Like it got bigger and bigger and bigger until it literally brought me down onto my knees, where I just couldn't put any weight on it. And my team happened to be there, and they said, like, you screamed and hit the floor, and we'd never heard anybody scream like that before. It's like it came from your soul, like it was really, really bad. Like you must have been in pain. I said, well, do you know what it was? I was in pain. I was in the most pain I've ever felt in my life, but it wasn't in my foot. It was in my gut. I was gutted. That's what it was. That it just broken me like that. That's where the pain came from. It wasn't the foot was irrelevant. It was like it was just this realization of like it ain't going to happen like it's supposed to happen. It's I think I'm so locked into this focus driven person, that is trying to inspire himself every day and just building up this huge snowball, and then someone just comes along with a big hammer and just cracks it open just like that. It's just like that hurts. So it took me off the trail for probably about 4 days. Got rushed off the hospital, had it drained, got a bunch of medication, and they kind of said you probably shouldn't go running again for a long time, but we gave it a week and then we were off again, and we got it done, got the job done. So yeah, foot infection. I often forget about that. There's always the other crazy stuff that people get into, with the missiles and shotguns and stuff. But yeah, that's a big lesson. That's a lesson in, when you really want something and someone takes it away from you, that hurts.
On these long runs, you say that you've got a crew that's crewing you.
Yeah.
In between, I guess, checkpoints, or in between when you meet up with them to when you meet them again down the trail, what sort of time frame or distances would the next time you meet them down the trail be?
Yeah, well,
would it be sort of many hours or only a couple of hours, or?
Well, like I said before, Matthew, it's like it sometimes can be days. It's like you're really limited to where there's access. And the thing is, with some of these giant trails that go through nations, essentially, is that there's places where there's just no access. So you've got to take all your own stuff, food. You've got to find the water. You've got to take your camping gear, emergency equipment. The list goes on, and that becomes challenging because you're trying to figure out how much you should carry. Do you risk it sometimes? Do you think, oh, look, I could probably do it in 3 days, but what happes if I do it in 5 days and I don't take enough equipment or food? So, that's always a challenge. So in terms of the team, like that can be every 40 Ks, every 200 Ks, every 10 Ks, just depends where you are. It really depends where you are. And the thing is, you can't rely on them. And as much as I can rely on them, because the people I've used in the past are just so amazing. Just to put up with what I'm doing is just amazing in itself. But I just don't rely on them. I just go, I'll be at this coordinate here, but in my own mind, I'm thinking, if you're not there, then I need to know what to do. Because they might have to drive. All sorts of things happen. Like they can get a flat tire, and that just screws the whole thing up. They're never going to get there. Or there's a locked gate somewhere, or there's often these kind of paper trails that don't actually exist. Like you think you're meeting someone on a road because on the GPS, but when you get there, it's just the middle of a field. So, it's you've just got to, you can't really rely on them. But again, the distances just vary. Just depends on if what's in the way, I guess.
And what sort of weight would the backpack be? If you're not going to meet them for 48 hours, for example, how much is your backpack weighing roughly? Like including your gear, food, water's the big one.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, water's always the heaviest weight. And the thing is, you try not to carry too much and see if you can get some along the way. But again, you can't rely on that stuff. So sometimes you have to carry as much water as you can. And every litre is a kilo. So, I've got a bladder that holds 3 litres. So that's 3 kilos before you even start, just in water. And then sometimes I might double up with that and just carry 6. So that's 6 litres. And then you whack a tent in there, it's another kilo, and they'll do bits and pieces. I've run about 13 kilos, I think, on my back on average, which doesn't seem like a lot of weight, but it is when you're doing the distances I do day in, day out, every day. You notice the difference. If you've been running for 3 days or 4 days or 5 days a week without a heavy backpack, and then you get a section where you're going to be out there for 3 days and you've got to carry something heavy, you feel that. Like you feel the weight. You think, geez, I'm tired as it is, and now I'm going to put this extra weight on. But you just think, do I take enough for just to get it done quickly because I can move more quickly with a lighter backpack. But what happens if I don't make it and then I don't have enough stuff, you know? So the weight's always the water, but also food, because I have to consume so much food. That doesn't matter if it's dehydrated food or not. You still have to take a lot with me, a lot of food, you know, just nutrition throughout the day alone is just a lot of food. So that takes a lot of the weight and space as well.
Now, just on success, who's the first person that comes to mind when you hear the word successful and why?
Successful. I had this conversation the other day with someone about success and what does success mean. And I think success to me means, before I tell you who, 'cause I'm not quite sure, but I think success to me means progress and growth. And I think if we're not progressing and we're not growing, then we don't feel successful. And if you don't feel successful, then you're not focused, you're not motivated, you're not inspired. And all those things that I guess make up success when you think about it, you don't have those things on your side. So I think you need to feel successful, and to feel successful, we need to grow and have progress. And I guess there's a lot of people that do that. There's a lot of people that are always striving for more and trying to grow. I get inspired by all sorts of people, from musicians to businessmen to a little old lady that lives next door here because she's always trying to get more out of her life. I just think, I don't know, it's hard to pick one person. I don't really focus on one person. And I think that's important, not to just focus on one person. Because if you look at one person as successful and then they do something wrong or something that doesn't sit with you morally, then you kind of go, well, that kind of shatters that. Do you know what I mean? Whereas if you surround yourself by all sorts of different people doing different things, then that really can't happen. So I just try and surround myself with all sorts of stuff. You know, I listen to music every morning. I've got motivational tapes. I've got pictures up. I've got slogans around. I'm checking out videos of all sorts of different people, you know, just constantly every day. And those people to inspire me to keep growing and keep progressing.
With like a growth mindset, is that something that can be taught, or is that something that has to come from within?
Within, I think. You don't want to grow. Like you got to want to. And the thing is, to grow, you need to change and be uncomfortable. And most people don't want to do that. You can only grow when you become uncomfortable, or you step through fears, and you have challenges. Only then is there progress, and can you grow? And you've got to want that inside. You've got to want something bigger than the fear it is, you know, or the pain or the challenges, to get to the other side of that. And then that's progression and growth. So I don't think you can teach somebody that, you know, they have to feel that. I think you have to have an emotional connection to what it is you're trying to achieve. And that's not just in running, that's in anything. And I don't think if you don't feel it inside, and I'm touching kind of my stomach right now because that's where it is for me. If you don't feel it, then you ain't ever going to achieve it. So don't bother wasting your time. You know, I've got heaps of goals that I'd like to go and achieve, both in running and in life. But I don't go and pursue them because I don't feel it. So therefore, it's just going to be a constant battle. And I think when people talk about working your passion, that's kind of where that comes from, I think. That feeling and want to do something. Because as I said, only then will you step through fears and take on challenges and do all the things you don't want to do, where you're chasing that feeling, and that in itself is progress, and that equals success.
Just on advice, if you could make a phone call to the 20-year-old Richard Bowles and give him some advice, what would you tell him?
20-year-old Richard Bowles, damn. 20 years. When I was 20, I just kind of arrived in Australia. I'd probably say don't. You've got to take opportunities as they arise. Like, if I'd taken all the opportunities that I had, going right back, and done something with those things, I wouldn't be sitting here right now speaking to you. That's for sure. And I think I'd probably be bigger and greater personally than I am now as well. I think I left it way too long to seize opportunities, and they were there right in front of my face, right there for the taking. And I kind of knew it, but I got distracted with other things like girls and partying and all those things you like to do when you're young. And I think I'd say to myself, no, take those opportunities, because they're amazing. Like that's would have been some amazing things that happened. So I definitely say that. Just if you've got opportunities and they're around everywhere for everybody, you just got to take them now, because it's now is the time for everything. But everything you want to do now, right now, is the only time. Because we're almost in March in this year alone. When you think about that, you go, "Where's 3 months? The 2 months gone? Like that's 8 weeks of my life. I really don't know what I've done." And that kind of scares me a bit.
What's the best piece of advice you've ever received, whether it's in around running or business or life? Is there anything that sticks out?
Not really, I think I've learned everything the hard way. So I've probably been given some amazing advice, and as I said before, never really taken it. So I've learned everything the hard way, but that in itself is kind of good as well. That really makes you learn stuff. I think what my mum, I'm not sure if this is the answer to your question, but I always remember my mum saying, and my mum died 10 years ago of cancer, but I remember her saying when I was a kid, because she was a single mum as well, bringing us up, and she used to say to me, "Richard Bowles, I'll only ever tell you once. And if you did something bad again, she just used to whack you." There was no like debate or argument going on. She'd say, "I'll only tell you once." So if she would say no, and then you go and touch it again, then you just get whacked. And I think that in itself for me is kind of like, yeah, like you just make the decision and then you just act upon it and you don't do the bad things again. Does that make sense? And I think for me, these runs is like, when I think about how I've done it, because I just do. I decided to do it. And so therefore I'm not going to complain or whinge about it. I'm just going to do it.
Yep. What advice do you have for any of the listeners out there who are thinking of...
Don't do it. Sorry, carry on.
Yeah, no, so if one of them wanted to do an adventure run of their own, like a multi-day one or a really long trail, is there anything that you could give them some advice on?
Well, I think you've got to determine what adventure is for you. Like I said at the very start of this interview, is like, that doesn't necessarily mean you're going to run through the deserts and canyons and through mountains and stuff. Like that can literally just be around the track, around the block. So I guess it's knowing what adventure means to you. And if you want to explore that, because if it's the running part that you're into, then maybe the adventure run is not the way to do it. Because you can just run on a treadmill and you can just run on a track. So if you want to experience that, just the running and the mental side of just the running alone, then yeah, just decide what it is for you. Because the thing is with going off on adventures, if I was to go and walk these adventures, with all the stuff that happens logistic wise, the people you bump into, the situations that happen, getting lost, getting injured in the middle of nowhere, the wildlife, the bombs, the crocodiles, all that stuff, that is a massive challenge in itself. And that plays around with your head. That solely plays around with your head. Like I'm probably anxious for the whole time I'm out there. From the beginning of the trip to the end of the trip, it's just constant anxiety. And that's just because of all the things that can go wrong and potentially happen. Then you've got the battle of the running stuff as well, physically and mentally. So those two kind of collide, and that becomes really, really tough. So I think you need to know why you want to go and do something, either long or multi-day. What is it for you? And if you like the challenge of your own mind and stuff, then you don't need to go into the middle of nowhere to do that. You can do that in your own street. You can do that in your own gym. So I think, yeah, just decide what it is and why you do it. In fact, there's a few people that have kind of been and gone, I've noticed, just globally. People contact me all the time to say, I'm thinking about doing this and can you give me a hand and stuff. And I'm always willing to give people a hand. But what happens is they never really fulfill it because they realize that they've just got a bigger ego than they need to do it. And I think because the ultra distance is kind of booming right now. Trail running, ultra distance running is kind of booming. I think there's a few people who are probably in it for all the wrong reasons, and I'm not saying that they can't do it, but I find that they do it to be some sort of hero, And if you're in it to be a hero, then you're never going to be able to complete some of these huge things, because it goes much deeper than that. You will take you to places where you can never dream of, and I can't even explain those places. It's just like Alice in Wonderland. It's like you can't explain those places. So you just gotta figure out why you're running in the first place. That's always a good start, and why you want to go far. If it's because it's trendy, and if it's because you want to impress other people, that's probably not the right way to go about it. You can, but it's going to be short lived. I think running the bigger distances it's a personal journey, definitely a personal journey, and it's very hard to share with people because it all happens internally. So as much as you might inspire people, you still can't share it with them. You still, as much as I speak to corporates and stuff every day, like I can only tell them kind of the top level stuff because I can't explain the other stuff. And Matthew, the thing is, I've sat down with like a whole host of psychological experts around the country, some of the leaders, from sports to sort of clinical, to personality experts. I did past life regression therapy. I'm not sure if you've ever heard of that. It's when you go into like your past lives, apparently. I explored my faith with a minister. Like, I took myself to kind of the extremes when I came back from adventures to try and figure all of this stuff out. And you never can. Like, it's like a bottomless pit. Like, there's just some things you can't explain. It's just something that you feel. And even if you're good, it's explaining your emotions. It's an emotion you can't explain. So yeah, that's a long way of telling someone some advice, but just figure out what it is. Why do you run? And everything else will take care of itself.
Yeah. So what's your vision for the future? Have you got anything planned, or is that it? You're just going to put your feet up and eat Doritos? That's
impossible, isn't it? You can't do stuff and then not want to do something else. And it doesn't necessarily have to be running for me. I'm not sure what it is. All this stuff's found me. I've not really chased it that much. I've not really, apart from the first one, that kind of cropped up in my own mind and I kind of chased that. And everything else has kind of just come my way. And that's kind of what happens when you start progressing forward, moving forward with stuff and just getting stuff done, that things just kind of fall on your lap. And I guess that's where the slogan, that comes from. The harder I work, the more luck I have. So look, I'm just waiting for something right now. I think something pretty big is going to drop onto my lap, and I don't know if it will be running. It could be like knitting. It could be like extreme knitting for 5 months. Why on a unicycle? I don't know. It could be anything. But I know it's coming. I can feel it. It's coming, and it's going to be big, and it's going to be challenging. And I'm looking at having a family right now, so that in itself is is going to be a huge challenge and an amazing experience.
Well, we'll definitely be looking out for you. Where can people find you online?
So the easiest way is just to bang my name into Google, Richard Bowles, just like you did yourself, Matthew, and all sorts of stuff comes up. But look, jump on my website, which is just richardbowles.com.au. Bowles is spelled Bowles, a bit like Camilla Parker Bowles, but we're not related, thank God. Actually, it could be cool, wouldn't it? It'd be cool if I was royal. I could run around in a crown. richardbowles.com.au, and from there you can link to all the social platforms.
Well, it's been excellent talking to you.
Thank you very much.
You're incredibly inspiring. I'll put all the links in the show notes so people can reach out to you that way. Before we go, is there one last parting piece of advice that you can give listeners? And
Do you know what I'd love, actually? I would love for people to send me some questions in. I don't know if they do that through you and across your platforms, or people want to contact me directly. I jump on Facebook and bang out their own questions. I love answering questions. And I often do it, in different ways. Like, I don't necessarily just respond with an email or just respond on social media. I sometimes take it as a topic and go and create a whole video about it while I'm running and really think about stuff, because I want to give back to the people. I want people to get the answers to the stuff that they really want, and this year my word is all about being vulnerable. I decided 2016 I'm going to be vulnerable because I don't think I've opened myself up enough. I think I've been very kind of how do you explain it? Like, not a superhero, but it's very hard to try and inspire people and not kind of use all the cliche lines that basically make me stand on a pedestal. And I don't want that, because I've had a pretty rough upbringing, and we didn't touch on that at all. But I've had a pretty rough upbringing, and I've failed miserably in my life and stuff. So I really want to try and share that with people. So I'd love it if people have got some questions on stuff.
Yep, that's great. Well, you definitely walked the walk, and you were born to kick ass.
Thanks, mate.
Yeah, well, thanks for your time, and we'll definitely keep an eye on you in the future, and we'll follow all your adventures, and good luck with everything.
You're a star.
Okay, cheers. If you've made it this far in the Born to Kick Arse podcast, then you've done well. I want to continue introducing you to the most fascinating people on the planet, so you can get an inside look at their approach, mindset, and secrets to success. Hopefully, these interviews will inspire you to take steps towards reaching your own goals, no matter how big or small. One common theme all these people have is that they are proactive, and I need you to be proactive right now by subscribing, rating, and reviewing this podcast on iTunes. I also need you to head over to borntokickarse.com and subscribe to my newsletter. Please also tell one close friend about this podcast, someone like you who also kicks ass and wants to realize their full human potential. Welcome aboard, and catch you next time.
Thanks for listening to the Born to Kick Arse podcast at borntokickarse.com. What's stopping you from kicking ass?